Hey everybody, it's Jamonster back again with Opus Gaming, and I'm here today to bring you guys a little bit of purple film testing. This is going to be one of the locals that I took my deck to right after I got it built, and this is just kind of working out some of the kinks. So it's going to be a little bit later into the tournament, but it's going to be a purple Kaido mirror match. So starting off right away with the gameplay on my side of the board, you're going to see me go to one Dawn, tap one Dawn, and play out of Buena Vista. We're going to do this right away just because we want to pick up extra cards that we think that we're going to need throughout the match, being like Douglas Bullet or a Ramper like Ain. But here you see me pick up something kind of interesting. I pick up the new event card that lets you pop 5 costs and below, just because Queen can be so commanding in the purple Kaido mirror match. So I wanted to kind of get that out of the way early. So we pick that up, and we, as you see, we won't use it for a while. But going over to the other purple Kaido player's side, he is going to Dawn up to 2 Dawn and just tap out right away, play a Black Maria, and then pass turn. Very standard opening for a purple Kaido, and I definitely think that's a good way to start the game off. Swinging 5 into leader on my side, and then I'm just tapping 3 right into Onigashima. Very standard second turn. You're going to see that, you know, pretty much any purple Kaido player that you play. So that turn is going to be over pretty quick, and we're going straight over to the other purple Kaido player's turn. He also taps 3 in Onigashimas. He just does it before he attacks, and then I'm sure he'll just attach a Dawn onto the leader and swing 6 at lead. Oh, we're just going to swing 5, sure. I mean, it's not like I was going to counter out of it, even if it was 5 or 6, so I can see not wanting to use the other Dawn, but you don't really have anything else to play, so you might as well attach it. Here we're gonna go up to, I believe it's 6 Dawn, and then instead of Dawn minusing 1, I just tap down the Onigashima so that I don't have to you know, do the whole Dawn down back and then ramp it back up with the Onigashima. So we just stay at the 6 Dawn. We're going to pop that Black Maria blocker and swing 5k at leader. This is just to start whittling our opponent's hand down a little bit. It's not going to make much of an impact, but our opponent actually decides to take it. Going down from 5 life to 3 life here, and that's actually a pretty big deal. So it's actually really good on my side of the board, because now that I'm looking at it, I'm really just now trying to get to my top end to just push damage. I'm not really worried about like defending myself and stuff like that. So the other purple Kaido is down to the mid game pretty early here, and he's going to ramp up on Dawn. It looks like we have Onigashima tapped, but we haven't used it yet. So just because it's tapped doesn't mean he has that extra Dawn, and it's not standing. We're going to tap 5 here for Queen. Dawn -1, draw 2. Here, I'm sure he's looking for a few answers, but honestly, having the Queen is pretty good here, because you can just counter out of my 7k King Swing with just block with the Queen and counter out 2k. So he's getting himself set up just to deal with my board and deal with my next turn, and we'll see how I respond. But here we're really struggling on what we want to discard. But we got rid of the Thunder Bagua, probably to opt to hold the Blast Breath in hand, because you can play more Blast Breaths for cheaper. We see here we tap the Onigashima. After untapping it, we get that extra Dawn, 2 Dawn standing. See how we proceed here. I think that it's swing leader, but swing leader, oh, only at 6. So we're gonna swing 6 with leader. I'll probably counter out at 7 here, just because I don't want to be taking early life, because my defense is so feeble. So these earlier swings that I can counter out of, I will, which just frees me up for space for me to take life a little bit later. Is really the biggest thing. All right, we Dawn up. It looks like we're at 8 Dawn. Tap the Onigashima Island to ramp to 9. Counting out my Dawn, I think that here I'm really thinking about using that event card I picked up earlier, but we're going to start off with a 5k swing at leader. If I'm the other Kaido player, I honestly do block this right away, so that Queen can be a card that blocks multiple attacks in one turn, because I'll be forced to attack into it next turn. Yep, block it right away, and I think I was trying to fake there, trying to devalue the Queen and act like I was going to attack into it with the King, but instead of that, they just blocked, and then I'm going to swing 7 at face. So this is going to call for the Blast Breath, which is one of the things you'll see in this matchup. Dropping the Blast Breath early really is going to keep you down on Dawn to be able to utilize kind of before you hit 10, but he's got a pretty decent ramp engine, so we'll see if that comes back to hurt him and all. We did play the event option there, so it's going to tap 3, Dawn -2, pop a 5k or a 5 cost or less, and we get the Queen out of there. Should have done that before I attacked with the 5k, because then I could have pulled an additional card out of my opponent's hand, but hey, that's just part of learning. Here I'm looking at how I want to proceed. I'm in a pretty strong position, but I want to make sure that I'm keeping the pressure on. And instead of trying to waste cards out of my hand, I think my opponent has a 10 drop Kaido. So I'm just going to attach 5 onto my 0 power Buena Vista and just push a little bit of damage. I gotta push a lot more damage than that, but I think I just mis-sequenced my match, or my turn. Going back over to the other Kaido player's side, he is going to Dawn up. He's going to be on 8 Dawn this turn, so it's going to keep him out of the range of dropping anything too powerful, but he can tap out and drop a Douglas bullet on this turn and try to take the board or take the game back into his control. As a purple Kaido player on the other side, I'm kind of scared of what he's able to do this turn, but I'm not fully scared because I know that a 9 drop Kaido isn't coming down. So we'll see how he progresses and see how much it takes for me to defend out. Really thinking about how he wants to do, or what he wants to do, because it's so important to make sure that you aggress correctly in this position, because you can make a pretty big statement on this Kaido player's side of the board. So we'll tap 4 and play an Uta. Is that, yeah, we'll tap 4, play an Uta, and then attach 2 Dawn and swing 7 at. It's either leader or the king, but it's going to be the king, and I'm going to 2k counter out of that actually, because I must not have any very good 1ks. Sometimes when you have all blocker 1ks, you don't want to get rid of them because they're so impactful on the board. So I opt to go with the 2k because I do play a higher count of 2k, so finding it again won't be too bad. We're going to restand everything, tap the Dawn. We go to 10 Dawn now with 1 rested, and we're going to just tap 9, play out the Kaido. Dawn -5, and we're going to get rid of that Uta right away. We don't want to deal with getting any of our attackers rested, but this is going to be more so that we can push damage on this turn. So we're going to do the Dawn -5, pop the Uta, and now we have Rush, but we're just going to start poking, I believe, 5 first with leader. Our opponent's probably going to counter out of this because you definitely should not. Oh, he does take the 5. He must not have any counter power. Next out, we're going to swing 7 with king. This is a rough position. If you, yeah, blast breath out of here, that's fine. Tap 1, he is going to Dawn minus again. So I believe he still does go to 10 next turn, even though he does Dawn minus on this turn, so it's not that big of a deal. And then he takes the 10k, so not too terrible. You take the 5, you counter out of the 7, and then you cleanly take the 10k. If you're going to take 2 anyway, you might as well do it like that because you don't want to waste a blast breath on a 5 cost. Here going over to our opponent's side of the board, I'm just getting ready for the 10 drop. I move my king over so it's easier to pick up, but our opponent is going to really have to 10 drop here, and that's going to put us in a position where we can put him down to 0, which is why we want to push so much damage in that position and why we were so happy to take damage early in the game. 10 drop Kaido does come down, but it's really feeling like it's not going to be enough in this board state, even though our opponent is in a pretty good position as far as like other resources. They're not in a good position as far as life resource, so I can't defend against a lot, but I will be able to defend enough. Yep, counter out of the 5k there because I have to. I can't take that damage knowing that I have a 12k swing coming on my next turn and all of his Dawn that he can attach to make a second attacker. So we're going to tap, ramp with the Onigashima. I believe that puts us up to 8 on this turn. Attach, oh, only 2 and swinging 7k at leader instead of trying to swing like a 9k or something like that. Interesting. But the 7k seems like it'll maybe be fine. It looks like I'm just trying to eat cards out of his hand so I can wall up with blockers. So we're going to put down 1 blocker. It's going to be the queen. Draw 2 and hopefully discard a dead card in hand. Hopefully this isn't the game where I draw 2 Onigashima. I did discard an Onigashima though, so hopefully 1 dead card out of hand and then a couple more usable cards to hand in that type of situation. With the queen on board now, if I don't sacrifice it to protect myself from that big 12k swing, I might be able to use it to go for game on the next turn. So in this position, I could try to be super hyper aggressive, but I want to recover my Dawn economy as well as kind of board a couple extra blockers and attackers. So I'm just going to be taking it slow since I'm so far ahead in things like life and hand resource. I can probably take 1 turn maybe of aggression without really responding to what my opponent's doing. So here we see our opponent tap 4 to bring 2 blockers down, which is going to make it a little bit harder for us to push damage. So now we're definitely looking for a Douglas bullet setup, but this gives us something where we can attack, take some of our opponent's resources, and just kind of like win the resource battle over time here. Yep, we take a damage from the leader. And we also take the damage from the 12k Kaido. Oh, we're thinking about taking the damage from the 12k Kaido. If we do, it's because we just want more resources and we're looking for something like a Douglas bullet or a 9-drop Kaido. So we take it here to try to help to find it so we don't have to struggle with our resources. Alright, and now on this turn I can see myself not being super aggressive, because if I force my opponent to counter with their hand as opposed to countering with their blockers and I board an Uta, it kind of takes away a lot of my opponent's aggressive pressure that they can use on the next turn, just because they'll be scared to swing because I'll get out of one of their blockers right away, and then I can use something like a king or a Kaido on my turn to get out of the other blocker. So we'll see how I progress the board state here. You could just use these 2 cards to try to push game if you have any destruction in your hand for your opponent, but we'll see how it goes. We tap 3 right away. 4. Oh, that's gonna be 4. Sorry, we're gonna tap 4 for an Uta. Yeah, I can see them stacked up better now. Tapping 4 for the Uta is definitely the play here. Am I just not attacking on this turn then? I mean, technically I really don't have to, because there's not really any bombs that can come out and kill my Uta, even if I do. Tap 4 and play it before, but you still generally want to swing before you play cards. So we're going to swing 6k at leader here. See if we can just pull a 2k out of hand. We really don't want to take the Black Maria or the other blocker. Well, actually, it wouldn't matter if we did, just because we'll rest down the other blocker. So they take the life instead of letting it get 7 or Dawn -7, which is interesting. That was only a 6k, and you're really struggling on resource here. But we'll see if I'm just going to take advantage of that, and we'll tap 4 and play out a second Uta. So what this does is that if he does King or Kaido my first Uta, I still have a second one to get out of that one blocker, and then X amount of attackers after that. So really trying to cleanly set up and make sure that I'm in a good position to finish the game on the next turn, especially because my opponent did take that last life. It's gonna be a rough position for the other Kaido player now, because you're looking at either having another 10-drop now, having a 9-drop, or having an 8-drop Douglas bullet, but the Douglas bullet doesn't fully get there because you can't attack really after it, and I'm not low enough on life for him to push for game. So really he's trying to wall up, but I know that he's very scared because it's going to be easier for me to pop the blockers. So we're going to see how he decides to wall up here. Looking at the cards, he definitely has to put up a good defense though, that's for sure. So we are going to go with the Douglas bullet play. Douglas bullet makes it so you can't attack, but he does come on the board and stop both of the Utas at the same time from being able to rest either of his blockers. So by playing that Douglas bullet and Dawn -4ing, what he does is he makes sure that he has 2 blockers on the next turn. It's a roundabout way to go of a defensive play, but it's still a very defensive play, and it's actually a very cool play to see come down like this. I think it's a really well thought out play. It's not perfect, but it's still very strong and it's still very good. He's doing the best that he can to try to with the resources that he has. So he's going to attach 2 Dawn onto the King here, or onto the Kaido, pardon me, and I think that he's going to try to reduce down the amount of attacks that I have, so he can just have so many attackers on board that I won't be able to do anything about it, which is a pretty cool strategy. We'll see if I let one of the Utas die here, or if he just swings at life and I just take it. I think I would take the resource in this situation, but it looks like he did swing at a character card, and I use a 2k counter and another card. I can't tell if the other card's a 1k counter or a 2k counter, but 2 cards out of hand to protect the character card. I didn't want to block there with the queen, just because I just didn't want it to be an attack target for his 12k Kaido, and then the 12k Kaido does come in right after that and hits life, and I just take it because it's going to be more important to get the card because I'm looking for a Kaido, and I do have the Kaido. So I tap 9, bring out the Kaido, crack one of those blockers, and then now it's just a count how many cards my opponent has in hand type of situation. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 valid attackers, so anything less than 5 cards in hand, it just doesn't really matter because it's going to take at least 1 card per attack. 1 card per attack plus a blocker. So we block out of the 5k right away, and then we swing another 5k with Uta. And this is actually where the game gets called. There's not a 1k counter in hand at all, so you would think that it would make it all the way up to one of the bigger attackers here. But so what we're doing today, actually, this is a perfect time to talk about it. We're going to be doing a double review where I'm going to be adding another gameplay video at the end of this one, just so we can do more reviews since we're doing so much talking about Film Kaido recently. But before we jump into that second video, you guys already know I'm on the way to 1,000 subscribers, so drop a sub down below. If you're supporting the channel, leave a like, leave a comment. It helps us grow a lot, and I just really appreciate all the support and everything that we've received so far. But help us get to that 500 subscriber count so that we can do our first part of the giveaway. But with that over and with a little bit of self-promotion over, let's jump into the second game of Film Kaido here. All right, jumping into some game 2, or this isn't game 2, but the second match that we have here today is going to be a little bit of Kaido versus Green Eustass Kid. I actually think that this matchup is really interesting because for the most part, as a Kaido player, you do feel like you have like a good matchup because you have a lot of ways to pop their cards that are on board, as well as just kind of like control the board. But it's the same thing that the Kid player wants to do, which is control you back, and they have a very strong control package in there. So starting off with some gameplay commentary, it looks like as a purple player, I didn't see Oniga, so we're giving it a good shuffle, trying to find that Oniga, and hopefully we do get a pretty solid start to start out the match here, because it's going to be really rough if we don't see a pretty solid start as the Kaido player. That's a really important part of the gameplay here, though. We'll see. It looks like the purple player does go first, so that helps a lot because we don't want to. Oh, never mind. It looks like the green player is going to go first, so. And now the leader comes out and everything. Alright. Once we find this Don, it looks like this match will start, but green player looks like they're going to be first and they're going to pass right away, so it's going to be a super short order for their turn. They don't have any one drops in their list that they want to play just because it's so easy for purple to pop those really low end cards. If I open up something like a Who's Who. Oh, he was just waiting for me to set up. He's going to tap 1 and play out Capone. Yeah, usually if you're the first player turn, just play your turn. You don't have to really wait for your opponent to fully set up because it's not like they can interact with what you do. Here I'm going to go to Don 2, and it looks like I have the Onigashima and other cards in hand. I'm thinking about whether I want to tap 2 to play out the blocker because of the Nekomamushi play, but I think it's just worth it because I can burn them on a Nekomamushi so I can put a blocker out later. But now that we're actually getting into the back and forth, this match is definitely going to be a war, and that's the reason I wanted to bring it to you guys today. I think this is a really interesting matchup here, though. 5k at leader, and we decide to take it here instead of countering out, and we tap 3 to put down an Okiku. And then purple player Don's up to 4 Don. We still have that blocker, which is going to be unfortunate. Let's see if we use it here. Swing 5 at leader. Let's see if he burns the Capone here. I doubt he will. Yeah, he just counters 1 card out of hand instead of picking up a new card. That's really interesting. Then we're going to tap 4 and play out the Ain. Ain's going to ramp us a card, and the reason that we're doing that is to devalidate the Okiku. So now that if Okiku swings, rests on our blocker, we won't be able to block with the card, obviously, but then we'll have an Okiku target to swing into with 2 5k cards, along with all of the Don that we'll be able to attach to them as well. So it'll be very hard for our opponent to retain an Okiku in this position. So we go with that instead of playing out the Onigashima, and I think that that's correct. Okiku's just going to swing 5, yeah. And in this situation, I think that you just block with the blocker here just to avoid all of the headache in general. So you just don't leave it on the board and have it get rested and attacked into later. We do take the second swing here, so we're going to go down to 3 Don. It's going to be pretty early, but this is where the defense starts. We see a 5-drop Basil Hawkins come down, and that is a crazy threat. So now he's threatening the card that we used to threaten the Okiku. So this is going to be a lot of back and forth play that you're going to see here. Ramping up here, since we were able to go to from 4 to 5 with the Ain, we're able to go up to 7 Don on this turn, and let's see if we tap 7 for a king. It looks like we tap 3 for the Onigashima, ramp up to 8 Don on this turn, so now next turn we're going to go up to 10 Don. Swing 6 at, I'm assuming the Okiku, yep, Okiku's going to go down, or are we going to block with the Bej? Capone gang. I think that it just really depends on what you want to do here. You want to force me to keep on swinging into the Okiku? That's fine. So we swing with the 6k and then we swing with the 5k. The 5k gets countered out of, but then we tap 3 so that we're able to use the Imperial event card and pop the Basil Hawkins. That way we burnt a card out of our opponent's hand, we hit their blocker, and they don't have the Basil to sit on, so now we just hit their board really well even though we didn't hit their Okiku, which is fine. Donning up on the green player's side. I'm not exactly sure how much Don he has, but he draws for turn. Let's see if he's going to be able to. His leader's still rested, but usually during your unsuspend or your refresh step, just make sure you get all your resources set so you just know all what you have to work with. I think that's an important tip for all newer players to the One Piece card game in general. But here we tap 2. Tap 1, play Bonnie, tap 1, rest Bonnie, activate effect to look at top 5. I think that's a pretty sound play here just because you do want resources, because I've been pushing damage onto you a little bit or been swinging at your cards a little bit. So let's see if he can pick up some resources. Here, seeing him pick up the 7-drop Eustass Kid is really, really hard for me just because that's a card I won't be able to kill and a card that I won't be able to easily attack into. Let's see if I deal with it in a decent way. So with the 8-drop Eustass Kid in hand, having that Okiku on board is a really big deal, so I definitely want to get that off the board on the next turn, or I want to accelerate the gameplay and just start going for life instead of trying to control the board. Here we see a 5k swing. We're going to counter out so we don't drop below 3 right away. And then we're going to tap and play out the, okay, yeah, Yamato. Not a bad play. I can understand where it's coming from. This is going to be a rough position if I'm able to counter out of it and then attack into it, because it's going to cost you cards in hand, and you just picked up a card without a counter. So that's going to be my focus for my turn. I know that for sure, but let's see how it goes. So we're going to go into our refresh stage. Tap, though, Nigashima. I think I forgot to Dawn up on that turn. That's an accident. Sometimes it just gets, oh no, I didn't forget to. It's just that I used the Imperial on the last turn. That was the issue. So now going into my turn, this turn I really, got to clear the Bonnie, got to set myself up. If I have a blocker, it'd be nice to put a blocker down for that Yamato, but we'll see. Next up is going to be the leader swing. How big is this leader swing going to be? Okiku didn't attack last turn, so we can't attack into Okiku, but I want to put damage on my opponent this turn anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Starving them out of cards would be nice though, because he doesn't have that many cards in hand. It looks like he's got 2 cards that don't have counter. So maybe this is a good position to either, pivot into attacking into my opponent's life here so that they don't have as much resource. Really thinking about what I'm wanting to do here, because I think that the way that I want to aggress my turn, I want to put a blocker down, but I also want to make some impact, and it's a little bit hard with the cards that I have in hand. So we're going to see me tap out for the queen. See a little bit more resource here. Yep, we get 2 2k counters here. That's a big deal. So my defense is bolstered quite a bit. Even if I have to drop a 1k, we don't care all that much. And I think that I might make a really big mistake here. Let's see, what would I decide to discard? I think getting rid of the Thunderbog was a perfectly fine choice, just because we've ramped so much already, and our ramp engine is so intact that we won't need that. But we get rid of the Karina here, and that's actually not that big of a mistake. It's just a card that has 1k counter. It looks like we're going to be setting up, push a 6k damage onto our opponent. It's totally fine. And looking back at the turn, I think that this is the turn that I would try to Dawn -7, because it looks like I have 8 Dawn. Oh, never mind. I wouldn't be able to Dawn -7, so I'm correct in not trying to do that, because I won't be able to Thunder Bagua right away back up. So here things are going fine. We're both at 3 life. I've got more cards in my hand than my opponent, but my opponent's about to drop a bomb, and this is the part of the game where you need to also start dropping your bombs as the purple Kaido player. We're going to swing 6 at life, rest on the queen, which is totally fine. We take the 6 here so that we can counter out of the Yamato, because we can't let that one go through. Yeah, this turn Thunderbog was going to be a big help, because even if my opponent dumps all his Dawn onto his Yamato, it's not going to be enough to really push damage, because I picked up those 2k counters off of Queen. So we'll see how things progress here though. The green player is really just trying to think of, does he want to board a card this turn? Does he want to put all of his resources into trying to push damage onto me? Let's see. If the green player swings and puts all his resources onto me and doesn't get the damage through, he doesn't have any counter power in his hand. So oh, he tries to swing 5k to pull out a little bit of counter power out of my hand, so 5k into the 5k, and I don't fall for the bait. I do want the card, but not enough to possibly have to take a double banish. Yeah, this is it. This is gonna be everything on the Yamato. I think here you just incrementally, well, it just depends. If you could board a second Okiku here though, you would just be in such a good position to protect your cards. We'll see. He does have the Paradise Waterfall, which is going to be a pretty big deal here as well. Really trying to figure out what he wants to do here though. Our locals is pretty chill though. We have a good amount of time, so we do get these turns to think like this. But if this was like a treasure cup or anything like that, this probably wouldn't fly. You'd have to make your decision by now for sure for what you want to do for your turn. I think at this point, just even commenting on the video, we've talked about all the different routes that are possible to go. And I always talk about this for like newer players or players that are trying to get better at the game. The best way to learn is to just to decide. If you don't know the answer to a problem and you're trying to learn how to figure it out, you're gonna have to pick one of the choices that you have, and if it's the wrong choice or the wrong answer, learn from that, because that's the best way you're gonna do it. If you can't figure it out kind of halfway through going through the problem, that's totally okay, because it's really difficult. Take some time after the match, go back through with the decision that you did make, evaluate it, and then decide if that was the right decision. I think that helps so much with like just decision making, because when you get to that position in the future, you'll have already figured out and worked through the problem and know how to work through the problem again. So he finally worked through the problem. He did attach a bunch of Dawn and it got countered out of, and this is my turn to try to take the game back into my possession. So if we swing here and we really try to push damage, we're trying to clear both Yamato and Okiku on this turn. It's rough because that means that we can't push damage onto our opponent, but we could possibly Dawn -7. So we're gonna swing 7 into Yamato with the queen. Really good play here. I think that makes the most sense, right? Swinging 7 into the 5 so that they have to get rid of a bunch of cards just to protect it. And with having not many cards left, it's just really good. I'd really like to see a follow-up swing. Oh, unless this Yamato dies. Yep, Yamato dies. So here I'm looking at my hand, I'm thinking about how much power I have to put on the Kaido to swing into the Okiku. Unfortunately, I didn't consider putting 2 Dawn onto it because I really wanted to make a play, wanted to board a certain card, but I really wish I would have put 2 Dawn here, because that just makes a lot of sense commentating on it back again. I think that that's the way that you want to play this matchup, is just like forcing the damage here. So yep, we're gonna put out another queen. That's the reason we attacked with the first one. We get a little bit more resource, and I believe that this is the queen where I make a really big mistake. The cards that you discard off a queen can be so hard to pick because it's really easy to be like, well, I don't have defense, but closing out the game here is a big deal. I get rid of my 8-cost Douglas Bullet, and that's one of my deck's big bombs. Having a big bomb, especially Douglas Bullet, can be a very detrimental card in the green matchup. You kind of always want to hold that in the green matchup. Putting it on the board and be able to rest all your opponents, or a couple of your opponent's blockers, namely being the Law as well as like the Killer that lets them draw a card at the same time, is a really big deal. And I should have tried to utilize that to push my opponent down from 4 life down to 2 life, essentially. But bouncing back from the mistake that we make on that play, we're just gonna Dawn -7 here. Put our opponent, I thought he was at 3 earlier, but now he was only at 4, so now he goes down to 3 life. 2 blockers on board. We do feel like our defenses are decent, because if he does rest 1, we still can block with the other one and counter out and things like that. But not getting that Okiku off the board leaves our opponent in a playable position, because they still have that 7-drop kid they picked up earlier, and now they're in the game state where enough has happened where they can start boarding those cards and really getting the value that they need out of them. Here, once again, kind of just going through and thinking about our turn. I think it's really important to decide on what you want to do for your turn, whether that's picking out your plays, picking out your objectives for the turn, I think is another really important thing, but just kind of deciding what you want to do. So we're going to tap 2, play the Straw Sword, rest on the Uta, attach a Dawn, swing 6 at leader, rest on the queen, and that's a big deal. We lost both of our blockers after putting out such a powerful like defensive turn, and now the opposing kid can threaten to put us on 1 life, which would be really, really rough, because that means that he can swing with everything the next turn as well. This turn we didn't want to take damage because we wanted to go into our next turn with 3 life and dropping a big bomb, but we'll see if we find it. If we drop a big bomb on the next turn, it's still a good position, it's still a good thing to do, but our opponent is slowly starting to get back that advantage. Playing through these blockers is a really interesting game plan, but here we'll be swinging 5k into the Uta. Really, it's a rough decision here, because can you afford to lose the card in hand to just protect the Uta that's on board? But you might be able to. Uta is a really powerful card, but we don't want to just be pitching our entire hand before our opponent's starting to go at life. But we do pitch the 1 Uta in hand to protect the Uta on board, so we don't have to tap 4 on the next turn to play out another one. Let's see how this goes. So things are getting rough here. We Dawn -7 on the last turn, so now we're up to 5 Dawn, tap 1, go up to 6. Meaning next turn will be on 8 to start and 9 by the end of the turn, depending on how Dawn minus effects go. But having 5 available Dawn is fine because I don't think that we have a bomb, and we do swing 7 into the rested Okiku, and we finally get the Okiku. So now our defenses look a little bit better, but swinging 9 at leader, this way we don't want our opponent to just block and counter with a 1k, and then we have to attach a bunch of Dawn afterwards. So that way we get a really meaningful attack in for this turn. We use up all of our Dawn. We don't have any defensive cards in hand, but our opponent only has 1 card on board, and we have 2 blockers. So once again, trying to reestablish that defensive state that we had earlier, and we ended up losing to all of Green's resting cards, but let's see. And this game is just like it's a wild game to watch, just because like both of us have been on 10 Dawn or like that higher end of Dawn for so long, and we're really using a lot of powerful cards to kind of like pull the advantage back and forth between each other, right? One second I'm winning, the next second he's winning, and it's really, really rough. So we're down to 2 life to their 2 life, it looks like. We're thinking about taking this damage. It's rough. Everything's such big numbers, and when we have such a small hand with no way to get additional resources except for out of life. So we'll see how it goes. Thinking on the defensive here, and as a defensive player, it's the same thing as an offensive player. You kind of have to just understand, you have to look at your opponent's board, understand what is most likely going to come, and just kind of pick where you want to put your defensive pieces there, and really weighing out the value of what's in hand to the value of what's on board and what's in life is kind of a big deal. You don't always want to take life there, and I think that was the biggest thing that I was kind of teetering back and forth on, but kind of like trying to become a better player. I think that's one of the things. Defensive sequencing and just knowing when you can sack cards and when you can't is going to be something I really want to learn for just like treasure cups, regionals, and things like that as a player. So always trying to get better. Here we see the 6k swing at leader. This is another hard one just because we don't want to block with any of our cards and just like lose them, but we also don't want to block and give up cards in hand. So we'll see what we do. We do have a 2k counter in hand, so it's just like, oh, okay. Oh, it must have been 6k into the queen. It wasn't 6k at lead. It was 6k into the queen. So we just use a 1k counter to counter out and keep our queen. Still has a lot of Dawn here, and he can still play some pretty impressive cards. And we didn't see a tap 3 restand and attach the rest of the Dawn onto him. That wouldn't be the worst play in the world. Really going through and looking at his different options and thinking about what he can do and how he can kind of cinch the game here. We do have some time, so it's not like you always have to kind of rush through your turns. It's just being mindful of how many turns that you use to really develop your board, right? Because you just don't want to push into time and then lose because your opponent has more cards left in their deck because you've just been resource grinding. So thinking about what the play is going to be here, I think, well, he doesn't have very many options. I think he has 4 cards in hand. So with a situation like that, I think it's just commit to either the defense or commit to the offense here. So we're going to commit to the offense, tap 3, play it on the Okiku. Drop down that blocker as well. Just dump your hand. Yeah, you're in a position here where you just defend properly, and you can really run away with the board state. So we put a Dawn under the killer here so we can get extra cards to hand, and we pass turn with 2 Dawn up. We restand our Eustass kid. Now we have 2 blockers, 2 life, and 2 cards in hand, and his defense is actually pretty decent. I do have 3 cards on board in my leader. The biggest problem here is the fact that the cards that I have on board are all blockers, and I need to make a decision whether I'm going to fully commit to an offensive turn or fully commit to leaving my defensive up. And I think I might make a mistake here and make the wrong decision. It's 50-50, right? Whether you go offensive or defensive, but it's very important to make the right decision here. But definitely looking at it, it's going to be an easy decision to learn from. Let's see what I do here, though. Starting my turn off, really trying to think my turn through before I start, and then just kind of go through all of my plays so I can pass my turn back over to my opponent effectively, and also thinking about what my opponent can do as well. So since we're picking up Dawn and looking to attach it onto a character card, we don't have a bomb, and a bomb is what we want this turn. We want to tap 9, drop it, and crack that Okiku, and then swing, pull the killer from them, give them an extra card in hand, but then swing with our other card. So it looks like we are trying to fully commit into an offensive swing this turn. So we are going to swing for 9k with Uta to avoid the Punk Gibson, give our opponent an extra card. But the biggest thing here is that we can still swing 7k with everything else, trying to have everything connect. So, and then trying to also force our opponent into blocking. 7k is going to get countered out of by a 2k and a 1k. It looks like it's a Raizo and a 2k Uppo. Tap Onigashima, we're going to ramp. Oh, tap 2. Instead of attaching the last 2 Don to swing 7k 2 times, we're going to tap 2 and play out another blocker. We have 4 blockers on the board right now and our leader. So our defense is just going back and forth. We do have a lot of defense, but I do think that we're running out of resources, and Kid, even though he's not picking up new resources, the resources that he has on board, that 1 8-drop or 7-drop Kid is just doing work for him. Going here, looking at the Dawn for the turn, kind of trying to think. It's just gonna be a 6k swing to rest on a queen. Still do have 2 blockers here, but we'll see how this happens. Yep, counter out with the 7, and he's putting us in a position where I need to kill him on the very next turn, or else, because I don't think he'll be able to kill me here. Even if he rests on the blockers, all in all of it is gonna just come down to like a resource balance, right? Even if he rests on my blockers, that means that he doesn't have as much attack power to push into me and force me to like counter out of, but I don't have that many cards in hand, so it's just a very it's hard to decide which play is the correct play. So we have everything donned up. We attach the Dawn onto the Eustass Kid. So we're at the point where that Dawn can't come off that character, so it's committed. So he's deciding that Kid is going to be swinging with the Dawn this turn, and we have the rest of the Dawn. So we can kind of figure out how much our opponent is going to attack for. And I don't think that I don't think we can lose here with the way that the board is set up. So since he swung before resting down a blocker, here we could just burn a blocker to make sure that we don't get Nekomamushi or anything like that, and we don't have to burn a bunch of cards in hand. Oh, but he's swinging at the character card to make sure that we can't bounce back at him. That makes sense. 8k is going to swing at, I'm assuming, the queen here. Yep, and we do block it. And here with his resource, so now he's making sure that I can't crack back at him and just try to swing for game with a bunch of attacks because he doesn't have much defense. But we're going to tap 5, play down the Trafalgar Law, pick up the Okiku, play down the Yokiku, and now we have a blocker Captain Kid, and 2 life. And we're just like outside of the scope of being able to attack into our opponent. It's really, really rough here. They got rid of a lot of our cards on that last turn by using the suspending effects to get attacks into. We get our queen back here, but they still have their Okiku. And this is another situation where you got to decide, are you going to swing for life, or are you going to be able to even clear that Okiku and then survive their next attack and like use your defense? It's a really hard position to be in, and I think that it's really like it's really becoming clear that I'm just like pretty far behind, right? No matter how hard I fight. So taking a little bit of time here to kind of think of, since we're so close to the end of the match, I think that we know that we have a little bit of time left. Taking a little bit of time here to think the turn through, because if there is a defensive option or a defensive way that our opponent can misplay, we want to play to that, but we don't want to just give up. It's just unfortunate because even if we swing with 7 Dawn on our leader and then Dawn -7, they still have 2 attacks to block the last 2 attacks, or 2 blockers to block the last 2 attacks. So seeing here, we're definitely going to be going out with a fight here, but it's a little rough. We just didn't see any of our big bombs to drop, and we got bullied by our opponent's big bombs, and that doesn't feel like it happens too often in Kaido. It feels like in Kaido, when you're the one doing the bullying, right? Not getting bullied by 8Ks and stuff like that and 7K characters. So where is this attack going? Let's see. It looks like it's an 8K swing, so it's gonna be bigger than the 7 cost Eustass Kid, so he'll need a 2k counter to get out of it, or he's gonna have to just let whatever I'm swinging at die, or he's just gonna have to take the damage. But if I'm swinging at life here, you for sure take the damage, just because whatever, like you can just block everything else. and you don't have to give up a bunch of resource. So defensively, we're thinking here, taking a lot of time to think about kind of like what we want to do. But I think that, yeah, yep, exactly. So what you do here is you block and you tab 1, play the Paradise, and restand. Taking the time there to think about like the proper defensive play is for sure the play, just because you don't want to just sacrifice your law, and you don't want to just like counter out. So I think he made the correct decision in the game state there, because he gets to retain an additional blocker, as well as just protect himself properly there. And then we see me on -7 to just hit one last life out of my opponent's life. But here he definitely wants to go for game. Since we don't have 4 blockers like we did the turn before, and we have so many attackers that are just big, he's gonna rest down one of my blockers. I've only got, it looks like I'm shuffling 2 cards in hand, so I'm really down on the resources here. And this is how you want to finish out a game as a kid. You want to grind it out. You want to like push your opponent out of resources and fully to just kind of develop yourself, because our opponent went down to 1 card in hand and used the 1 card in hand, which was the Paradise Waterfall, to defend properly on the last turn. So here we get the queen rested. We take the damage to try to see if we have any defense in hand, but I don't think we picked up like a blast breath or anything like that. We'll see. So the 6k attack did connect. We didn't counter out of that one, but I think it's more so because we didn't have counter power, because if I did, I think I do counter out of that for sure. So then you still have a blocker and a life to take before your opponent can get to you. I think we're just counting up the numbers to make sure that all the numbers are swinging correctly up. We're going to swing 9 here. Yep, and then we just sack a queen, because 9 is a huge number. If we attach another 3 on, I think you attach onto Law last here, because he is a blocker. And then you just swing with leader 2 times here and see what happens. Oh, maybe it is 3 Dawn. No, I think it's 3 Dawn onto leader, yeah. And then we'll swing 8 here. So if I do have the blast breath, that would be ideal, but I don't. So I do counter out to 9 with the 2. He swings 6 here. I counter out 1 more time. And I think that now I'm on no cards in hand, so he just knows for sure. He taps 3, discards the last card that he drew for turn, and swings with his leader. And there's nothing I can do about that. So it was a really, that match was actually really fun to watch, because it was so back and forth, and there were so many big plays on both players' turns. I think that the green player just really piloted that beautifully, honestly. A lot of his turns were turned out perfectly. A lot of his defensive sequencing was also very perfect, and the way that he valued like what cards on board were important compared to what cards were in his hand were important compared to what cards on my side of the board were important. He really just like ran the resource engine of the game, or ran the resources of the game. He had more than me almost the entire game, and just the way that he utilized them was a lot better. So I think that was a really sweet match. But Green Kid, man, it's got to be, if not the best deck in the format, one of the best decks in the format. And I also think that it has a pretty decent matchup against Kaido. Kaido usually does have a counter to it with a lot of the removal, but when you don't see your removal, Green can just grind you into a space, even though you play a lot of defensive cards, that they can take the win. So this is me, Jamonster, with Opus Gaming. Before I ramble on too much about how great this match was, I'm going to be out of here, but you guys already know, drop a like, drop a sub, leave all the love down below, and I really appreciate it. But just me, Jamonster, I'm out. Take care, guys.